USA, USA, USA. One, it's war. It's war on social media. It's war for your mind. It's war against Twitter. Two, Balenciaga seems to be in favor of child pornography. What other brands are into kiddie porn? Three, the USA beats Iran to advance to the knockout round of the World Cup. And it was tense. It was exhausting. It was awesome. It's the Will Cain podcast on Fox News Podcast. What's up? And welcome to Wednesday. As always, I hope you will download, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your audio entertainment. Apple, Spotify, or at Fox News Podcast. How about the USA? How about Christian Pulisic? How about Tyler Adams? How about advancing against a geopolitical rival who had attempted to get the United States of America banned, suspended for 10 games from the World Cup for altering the Iranian flag? How about beating a global sponsor of terrorism? How about the United States winning against Iran? An absolutely exhaustingly tense game. Only made more so by the confluence of soccer haters and soccer cool guys on social media. Remember a few months ago when I did my ranking of the absolute worst sports fans? I think I put soccer guy like third, maybe. I know basketball guy was the worst for the constant invocation of you don't know basketball while living on Instagram highlights of understanding basketball. Baseball guy is really rough, but at least has some humility and understanding that people aren't that into his sport. Soccer guy is like Napoleon complex of the sports fan. A soccer guy is awful. The only thing he has going for him is that he thinks he's into something that nobody else is, and then therefore he's imbued with some special wisdom. He's not unlike the basketball fan. He knows little. And one of the most, toolish statements I could ever say. I've forgotten more soccer than you'll ever know. But you're only outdone because you create this little odd space with the guy that hates soccer. That game was terrible. How do you score one goal and advance after 2 games? Look, man, just enjoy the red, white, and blue. And if you can't enjoy that game, if you can't feel that tension, I don't know, man. You don't have a pulse. You don't truly like sports. That right there was competition. That was a win for the USA. I'm going to break that down in story number 3. But first, story number 1, the war on social media, the war for your mind, the war against Twitter. Biden administration press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre took to the podium this week and said that they would be keeping an eye, monitoring what's going on Twitter. The Biden administration, not for the first time, suggesting that the most important part of speech is not the freedom of speech, but the protection of speech from misinformation. What is misinformation? Whatever they define to be misinformation. Twitter, as a private company, has decided to open up the gates. Twitter has decided to re-engage the idea, the cultural American idea of free speech. Elon Musk this week in the Twitter Transparency Project is opening the hood. He's going to let us know exactly who was turned down, who was turned up, who was silenced. He's reinstated something like 11,000 accounts who were silenced over quote-unquote COVID misinformation, for being on the wrong side of Karine Jean-Pierre, for being on the wrong side of Joe Biden. Who's back? Well, if he wants, Donald Trump. Who's back? Andrew Tate. Who's back? Roughly 11,000 others. Now, Twitter, it's pointed out, is a private company. No matter what they did in their past to silence, that's the prerogative of a private company. And that's true. And it's important that we start from the premise of understanding the First Amendment, the enshrined constitutional value of freedom of speech. The Constitution protects us from censorship from the government. It does not protect us from censorship at our job. I can't wear a Make America Great Again hat while working the checkout counter at Walmart. Colin Kaepernick can't kneel during the national anthem while in the employ of the National Football League. We can't say whatever we want, whenever we want, totally free from repercussions. But we can be expected to not expect governmental interference in our speech. The attorney generals of both Missouri and Louisiana are in the midst of a lawsuit where they have emails and they are alleging that the government coordinated with big tech, coordinated with private companies to pick and choose winners and losers, loud and silent, to identify who should be censored. As part of that, by the way, Dr. Anthony Fauci gave a 7-hour deposition last week. But this isn't limited to the government stepping in with a police officer in your house turning off your computer. This isn't a government just stepping in and jailing you, as they would say in China or Iran, for saying something that they don't like. If the government is playing an active role in coercing, persuading, using the carrot, and certainly using the stick for coordinating with big tech to silence Americans, that is a violation of the First Amendment. Let us not just sweep our hands, wave our hands at this and go, well, you know, Twitter was a private company. Were they? Or were they acting under the inducement of the United States government? That is more than interesting. That is more than important. That is pertinent to the future of our democracy, to the United States of America. But there's something more. Very few countries on this earth have, first of all, enshrined in their constitution the embrace of free speech. But beyond that, very few cultures across this globe have embraced the principle of freedom of speech, meaning the famous statement, I don't agree with what you have to say, but I will protect to my death your right to say it. That's not just about the Constitution. That's not just about the First Amendment. That's about the Western Enlightenment ideal that in order for a society to progress, in order for freedom to be maximized, we have to, at a minimum, be free to say what we believe. That's a cultural value that's unique to the United States of America. Canadians don't feel the same way. They have hate speech crimes in their country, but also Canadians just simply don't believe that you should be able to hear everything. They believe in duct tape over a mouth, as do the Brits, as do the Germans, as do most countries in Africa, as do the Asians. Almost every country across this globe, even on the cultural level, set aside the governmental level, on the cultural level, don't think it's healthy for everybody to just say whatever they believe, whatever they want. But here in the United States of America, we've embraced, at least in our past, that cultural principle. Of course, it's been undermined. College students today don't seem to any longer believe in freedom of speech. And as an extension of that, corporations have now adopted an anti-free speech position. In a previous episode of the Will Cain podcast here, talking with Jennifer Say, who used to be a big executive at Levi's, we talked about that. Like, how do corporate CEOs so readily bend to the woke mob when the woke mob even goes against cultural principles? She said it's because basically we have a bunch of pansies as parents who want their children to be their buddies and not their sons or daughters. Please like me. I had you so that I'd have somebody in this world. And therefore, in order to remain your kid's buddy, you got to adopt all the modern ideas coming out of Bryn Mawr about free speech. So the point is, whether or not it's the individual or the corporation, as a cultural principle, we're losing touch with who we are. We're losing touch with the idea that you should be able to say that it's good for you, it's good for me, it's good for us, whatever you believe. Here's the latest example of that. Apple has now taken its war to Twitter. It's not just the United States government. It is big tech, maybe, working in concert with the government, maybe working according to their own principles, who've said, now you've crossed the line, Elon. Now you're letting people truly have the freedom of speech. Apple's now not advertising on Twitter, and there's been some discussion about whether or not Apple would remove Twitter from its App Store. Elon Musk has said in response to that if that happens, maybe, just maybe, he needs to go ahead and create his own phone, maybe under the Tesla brand. You know, if you're an Apple executive and you're looking at Twitter and the quote-unquote floodgates have been opened, better yet, characterized by reporters at the Washington Post as the gates of hell have been opened. You know, maybe you could make the argument, look, it's not that we're opposed to freedom of speech, but now there's a bunch of ugly stuff going to take place on Twitter. Okay, maybe some far-right trolls. Well, wasn't there ugly stuff taking place on Twitter before Elon took over? I mean, one of Elon's first actions has been to try to reduce the number of accounts proliferating child pornography because there was too much child pornography on Twitter before. That didn't cause Apple to reevaluate its position on that platform. But now that there's a multitude of ideas left free from censorship, Apple might have questions about whether or not its brand should be associated with that environment. You know, I've got a question for Apple. If you don't want your brand to be associated with an environment that tolerates, meaning does not suppress, does not censor, a multitude of ideas, even the ones that you do not agree with, and some you might find reprehensible, if that's not an environment that Apple feels like is good for its brand, then why are you in the United States of America? Because that is the environment of the USA. Free ideas everywhere you look. Last I looked, in Northern California as well. People free to disagree, people free to say whatever you want. That's just a platform, the United States of America. It's a land-based platform, a land-based geography. Is your brand too sacrosanct to coexist with an environment that free, Apple? Or is it only Twitter? Because when I look at Apple, I seem to find some other choices that suggest maybe not only is Twitter the not right environment for your brand, but maybe the USA isn't the right environment for your brand. Now that you don't want to be associated with a platform that embraces free speech, can we ask you, why is it you're so ready to kowtow to the Chinese Communist Party in order to exist in the environment of China? All the dollars, all the yen, too much to remember? Or maybe just enough to remind you who you are, Apple. Maybe you're best suited for the environment of communist China. We seem to agree, you and I, Apple, because the news this week reads that, in fact, Apple coordinated with its App Store, coordinated with the Chinese Communist Party to interfere in the airdrop mechanism on its phone, which was being used to help coordinate the Chinese protests we talked about earlier this week here on the Will Cain podcast. Protesters across China standing up against Xi Jinping, standing up against the Chinese Communist Party, standing up for their freedom, and using their iPhones, using airdrop to help coordinate where they would be. But not Apple. At the direction of the communists, Apple turned down its airdrop feature. Sounds like the perfect environment for Apple. Guess that's the platform that's perfect for your brand. It's not just this. You've made it clear. I think this is fascinating. I want to read to you a letter. I think it's important. Everyone should understand this is what's going on. This is a letter from Brendan Carr. He is the chairman, the commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission, currently under the direction of the Biden administration. The commissioner of the FCC sent a letter this past summer, June 24th, 2022, to Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, and Sundar Pichai, chief executive officer of Alphabet and Google, wherein he says the following after some prelude. It's a long letter. It's 4 pages. I won't read it all, but I think it's important you hear some of this. He writes in part now to the CEOs of Apple and Google. I am requesting that you apply the plain text of your App Store policies to TikTok and remove it from your app stores for failure to abide by those terms. He's asking the United States government. He's asking Apple to take TikTok off of its platform. Why? Here's why. TikTok, and I quote, is not what it appears to be on the surface. It is not just an app for sharing funny videos or memes. That's the sheep's clothing. At its core, TikTok functions as a sophisticated surveillance tool that harvests extensive amounts of personal and sensitive data. Remember, this is a letter, an official letter from the commissioner of the FCC to Apple and Google. He goes on, indeed, TikTok collects everything from search and browsing histories to keystroke patterns and biometric identifiers, including face prints, which researchers have said might be used in unrelated facial recognition technology, and voice prints. It collects location data, as well as a draft message and metadata. Plus, it has collected the text, images, and videos that are stored on a device's clipboard. The list of personal and sensitive data it collects goes on from there. This should come as no surprise. Within its own borders, the People's Republic of China has developed some of the most invasive and omnipresent surveillance capabilities in the world to maintain authoritarian control. This is the FCC commissioner telling Apple and Google that TikTok is collecting, quite honestly, many of your and many more of your children's face prints, fingerprints, draft emails, draft tweets, published emails, published tweets, passwords, other apps, passwords onto other apps on your phone, voice prints. TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which in its essence, if not owned in the traditional sense, is under the direct control of the Chinese Communist Party. The commissioner of the FCC is saying to the CEOs of Apple and Google specifically the following. He says that TikTok is a national security threat to the United States of America. Now, that is not a partisan point of view. That is not a conspiratorial point of view. Republicans have pointed out that, like former President Donald Trump, TikTok should be banned, as has Democratic Senator from Virginia, Mark Warner, that TikTok should be banned in the United States of America. But a national security threat, nor child pornography, were issues or remain issues for Apple or for Google. What and where do they make their stand? Well, with the Chinese Communist Party, clearly, in helping suppress protest for freedom in China, with the Chinese Communist Party in helping TikTok collect information on your children, on yourself. And it's not just for the algorithm that they can then program the next video they see on TikTok, which in and of itself is scary. Because think about the time that you put into raising your child. Think about the time that they spend on TikTok. In essence, for hours every day, that algorithm programmed by the Chinese Communist Party is feeding information to your children, is raising your children. It's not just for the algorithm. It's a national security threat to the United States of America. And that isn't enough to get it taken off the App Store for Apple or for Google. You know, it's not just about Elon Musk opening up the hood and showing us where the censorship was in the past. We need to know who was turned down, who was turned up, how were we manipulated, what were we not allowed to see, what was false that we were told is true, what was true that we were told was false. It's not just about the past. It's also about the present. If Twitter's free, what does it look like? Can Elon Musk make a phone? I'd love him to make a new free content platform. You know? Make Twitter robust. A place where I publish the Will Cain Show. Make it a place where I go to watch full episodes of Tucker Carlson. Let me escape YouTube. Let me escape Apple's App Store. Let me escape Spotify. Let me escape the censors. Make it a content platform, a robust, full offering content platform, Elon. But it's not just about the past. It's about the present, because I want to know who's doing what now. How is Apple turning up or turning down certain podcasts? Can't see the Will Cain podcast. Can see NPR's latest on why the COVID vaccine is nothing to worry about. I want to know Google search term results. What if I want to see the latest study on heart injury and the vaccine? How deep, how many pages, how possible is it to see on Google? And obviously, It's about the future. Our children, our culture, our constitutional values, our own government, and the takeover potentially by a foreign power. Oh, there's war. There's war on social media. There's war for our minds. And right now that war is against Twitter. And all we can hope is the good guys win this war. Story number 2. Speaking of child pornography, Balenciaga. I mean, this story will blow your mind. I'm late to the game. Many of you may have already been read in on Balenciaga, but I've begun to go down the rabbit hole. And let me tell you something. Even talking about it will make you sound like a conspiracy theorist, but like every other conspiracy theory, it turns out this one, by the way, is undeniably true about Balenciaga. It goes like this. The luxury fashion brand Balenciaga put out a advertising campaign approximately a week and a half ago. The advertising campaign featured young children, toddlers, showing off a new bag, a new backpack. It's a teddy bear. The teddy bear, though, is wearing bondage, leather, skimpy bondage gear. People noticed, that's odd. Why would you have S&M fashion modeled by 4-year-olds? The ad campaign had some still photos, styled, art direction, professional photography, a set. And people started looking into the set of this set of photos. What they noticed was on the desk in one of the photos, a child is standing on a couch holding a blue teddy bear in bondage, clutter on a coffee table in front of her. And amidst the clutter, a bunch of paperwork, and people could zoom in and see what is that paperwork. And as it turns out, I've seen conflicting reports on this, but it's either it's paperwork, pages from the Supreme Court cases of Ashcroft versus the Free Speech Coalition, or in the alternative, some have said, the U.S. versus Williams. Either way, they are cases involving whether or not child pornography is protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. What exactly are you getting at, Balenciaga? Now, outrage ensues. People notice. People start asking questions. Balenciaga took that ad campaign down, but here's something fascinating that probably hasn't made the rounds quite as prolifically. They replaced that campaign with a new one. And in this campaign, it's a picture of like a kind of sexy, professional, redheaded lady, I guess, in Balenciaga fashion wear, sitting in an office with her feet up on the desk. Well, once again, people are like, let's just take a look. What's going on in this photo? Well, in this photo, there's a stack of 3 books in the background on the desk. And one of these books is by an author. It's an art book by an author named Michael Bormans. Okay, so some Twitter and internet sleuths look into that and start Googling Michael Bormans, and you come up very quickly with some of his artwork. What does his artwork entail? Well, how about images of occultism, pedophilia, cannibalism? It's really dark stuff. I saw some of these images. It's stuff, like a toddler with an amputated arm laying on the ground, kind of crying. It has images of 2 dudes, 2 black guys in bondage, or at least their heads covered, seemingly eating human arms. It's very occultish. It's very dark. It's very bloody. So why is that the artist featured or styled into a photo shoot for Balenciaga? There's more. There's another book on that desk. It's called The Cremaster Cycle. What is that? Well, people look the Cremaster Cycle up, and I guess this is what they found out. It's a book by an artist, and this artist also has paintings where there's a man eating, looks like a muscle of some kind, blood all over his mouth. And what is the muscle? Well, what is the cremator muscle? I guess it is a muscle that controls spermatic action in the human body. What's going on here, Balenciaga? First of all, you got to understand, these types of fashion photo shoots are not the Environment isn't by coincidence. Look, they hire professional photographers, professional set designers, people whose entire job is to stage a photo. Art direction. That's a job. Art direction. Make this look the way we want to look for our brand. And people have started to go, well, who are those people? Because what Balenciaga began to do is immediately throw the photographer under the bus. Now, the photographer, and I don't have his name in front of me, makes a decent case at first. Like, look, I don't have anything to do with the set. I come in, I take photos. And that's, he has a point there. There's jobs every step of the way in this. The fashion stylist to put the clothes on, the set stylist, the art direction. It's reasonable to assume that the photographer isn't the one that placed those books on the desk. However, you look into the photographer and he has some stuff asking, for example, why is child pornography capable of being censored, but gun content, gun materials not censored? Okay, let's say he's anti-Second Amendment, gun control, fine. Reasonable position to hold. I disagree. Let the debate ensue. But do you want to make that argument while arguing for the liberalization of child pornography? Odd. Okay, but again, that doesn't mean he is the advocate for this dark material on Balenciaga ads. So people keep looking. Well, who's the art director? Who's the set designer? And they come along this name, Lada Volkova. Okay. Who's Lada Volkova? Internet sleuth starts going through her. She's now shut it down. Her Instagram. Now, this gets ugly. Her Instagram covered with all kinds of images. Blood-covered sets. Look like murder scenes, I'm talking about like a unmade bed, carpet, all sprinkled and dropped with blood. What's that about? How about this one? She had an image of a child cut open at the abdomen, his entrails spilling out onto the ground. Really graphic. Other ones, a lot of them, of children in bondage situations, tied up. Another one on her Instagram page, a kid, a toddler, again, holding up a skull in almost a worshipful pose. And then another one's just a full-on Satan thing. I mean, you got the pentagram, you got a dude in devil horns popping a squat over some lady's head who's tied down onto a pentagram on the floor. It's just full-on Satanism. Oh, why is Lada Volkova's tastes the one to be embraced by Balenciaga? Is it all too coincidental, you think? Is it picking? No, this is everywhere. How about this? This is kind of weird. In one of the photos, there's yellow tape, right? Like crime scene tape. And at first you think it says Balenciaga all around the tape. But people have noticed, there's two A's though. B-A-A-L. Balenciaga's only one A. Baal. Who's Baal? Baal is a pagan god that people, thousands of years ago, to whom people made child sacrifice. What are they doing? Are they trying to be, edgy, putting these Easter eggs and everything? Listen, this is the kind of stuff that, quite honestly, deserves the deep dive, not the dismissal of conspiracy. Let me give you an example. Okay, you guys remember Pizzagate. Now, Pizzagate was where a crazy person went into a pizza shop, shot it up because he thought it was a ring of a child porn thing, right? Well, the reason that Pizzagate originally got started was, weirdly, you know who John Podesta is? John Podesta is a power behind the throne of the Democratic Party, behind the Clintons. He's got a think tank. It's massive. Daryl Cooper at Martyr Made did an awesome podcast on Jeffrey Epstein where he talked about this. So John Podesta's brother, Tony Podesta, is also a Washington power player. He's an art collector, and he was featured in some big magazine. People started noticing these odd pieces of art he had throughout his house. They started looking up who's the artist. Once again, an artist whose work is just littered with abuse of children, the sexualization of children. What is going on? I mean, this is kind of important, right? As people pointed out, banks stopped doing business with Kanye West because of anti-Semitic statements. I don't think to this moment any banks have distanced themselves from Balenciaga for advertising child pornography. We could keep going. I mean, Kyrie Irving. Name the the controversial celebrity and what they might have done and the way that they were ostracized throughout society by mainstream culture, by finance, by banks, by media. And just ask this question, not whether or not they should or should not have been, but why were they and why were not those who push forward child pornography? Where is the mainstream media? Where is the New York Times? Where is the full outcry? Where's the deep dive? Where's the investigation? It's all worth it. Why are these, at the very least, bad taste, wannabe rebels in charge of art direction, at the very least, at the most, advocates for child abuse in positions of power? Okay, if not advocates, appreciators from Podesta onto Balenciaga, appreciators of child abuse in positions of power. Why? That might be a question that's worth finding the answer. For what it's worth, it's not just simply a conspiracy, it's acknowledged. They've now apologized, Balenciaga. They've acknowledged the ugliness of this ad campaign. They've distanced themselves what they call third parties. I don't know if that's Lada Volkova, the photographer, who they're going to try to lay the blame on. But make no mistake, the blame doesn't stop with the art director. It's not as though Balenciaga are fools. It's not as though they don't vet these people, like they didn't see their prior work. And here's what's most important, what I'm really getting at when we ask these questions. It's not as though they're alone, Balenciaga. No one's talking about this. That was a dual ad campaign, cross, Balenciaga and Adidas. Where's Adidas? Silent. And this fashion company, I promise you, look into Gucci, look into the others, find more, ask more questions. It might just be important. Story number 3. Now that was a good soccer game, and we can call it soccer, in the World Cup. The United States of America beats Iran 1-0 in the World Cup and advances out of the group stage to the knockout round, where they will take on the number 1 seed from another group, the Netherlands. That will be a tough match, and we'll get to that in due time. But this one was rife with geopolitical tension. You know, the United States Soccer Federation took off the Islamic symbol from the Iranian flag. Iran asked the United States be suspended for 10 games from the World Cup. Beyond that, there's tensions between the two nations because of Iran's global sponsor of terrorism. There is tension between the two countries because of protests on the streets of Iran, not unlike China, as we wait to see how will America support the freedom movement in Iran. That's not to say any of that falls on the players, the individuals in Iran. The players neglected to sing the national anthem their first game of the World Cup. But what it meant was, this was a tense game, and not just because it was win or go home. We looked really good. The United States of America looked really good in the first half. We possessed the ball. We created chance after chance. Finally, Christian Pulisic, Captain America, our best player, scored a goal. Beautiful cross, aerial diagonal cross from Weston McKennie to the right back, Serginho Dest, who headers it straight in to the box, where a charging Christian Pulisic puts a foot on it and scores America's game-winning goal. He also crashed into the goalie, and I'm pretty sure took a hard shot to the nuts. The family jewels, look, how many injuries, he did go back on the field, but somebody said this to me on Twitter, how many injuries outside of the soccer, faking it? Hey, more on that in a minute. How many injuries are you absolutely legitimately calling for the stretcher, and then 6 minutes later capable of running around? Fellows, we all know that injury, okay? He took one. Well, there wasn't just one ball smashed into the goal on that play. And it was enough that after halftime, Pulisic didn't come back out. Let me take a minute to talk about the faking of soccer injuries. I hate it. All right, so first of all, at the beginning of this podcast, I talked about soccer guy. Here's the truth. I am a soccer guy. I think in quantity of hours per week watched, I probably get a good okay, there's more American football because one college football game is 4 hours, one pro football game is another 3, and I watch more than one of each week. But I watch at least one English Premier League, 1.5 when they're on a week, and I watch, 4 hours of practice and at least 2 games a weekend in soccer. Not to mention the YouTube videos I watch with my sons about, the man in the shadows, Sergio Busquets, or Kevin De Bruyne's ultimate crosses. I love soccer. I study soccer. So I'm just soccer guy has less than Christian Pulisic after that goal. You get what I'm putting down. Always having to prove himself because he's the guy that likes the thing that nobody else likes, probably because he can't really talk about other sports, so he doesn't want anybody else to come in and like it because he's got to protect his special knowledge. But I am a soccer guy, and I hate the flopping. I hate it so much, and I get why it's done because you want to get the call. And here's the problem. There's a cultural problem in soccer. The refs reward that nonsense. They reward Neymar rolling around like he got shot by a 30-06 from the bleachers when he just got touched. If the refs just exercise discretion on what looks real and what doesn't look real, with a little stricter call, soccer wouldn't be thought of as so soft. Just enough with the flopping, enough with the faking. There was an Iranian player. He fell close to the mic. Did y'all see that? It sounded like he had a compound fracture. I mean, I have a good friend of mine who just blew out his Achilles. He didn't even know he was hurt. I mean, he heard something and he felt funny, but I was like, pain? He's like, no pain. So, what could this guy have done, really, to be screaming and rolling around like that and 60 seconds later be up and running and doing the fake, 30 seconds of limp and then, magic spray. You ever seen soccer magic spray? They sprayed on it and it's amazing. We all need to get some. But I get it, how it turns people off, okay? Because the non-soccer fan, they hate that stuff. They hate 0-0 ties as well. And I get it. But I don't get non-soccer fans saying that wasn't awesome. That was an awesome tension-filled game because as good as we were in the first half, we weren't so good in the second half. All of a sudden now Iran had possession. Iran's knocking on the door the entire time. We're on our heels. We're just trying to preserve the 1-0 lead. I mean, I don't know why our manager Greg Berhalter won't put in Gio Reyna, our wonder kid. I think he's 19 years old. For Borussia Dortmund. I don't know why he won't let him play. I like Jesus Ferreira, the striker from FC Dallas. Josh Sargent, our starter's good. I don't get Haji right. He played poorly when he came in after Sargent was hurt. As we move on to the Netherlands, we're going to need somebody who can score some goals. I believe, and even though the guy said, you don't know soccer, he said, I believe that's Jesus Ferreira. And at some point in the game, for some 30-odd minutes, Gio Reyna. But that was fun stuff. That was USA. That was us moving on. I can't even remember everything I was going to talk about when it comes to this game. Just that it was amazing. Go in on the USA. Watch us against Netherlands. Could, should, probably will be our last game. The Netherlands are good. But I don't know. This USA team, not bad, the red, white, and blue. I have recommendations from you for the best history podcasts out there. I posted some stuff, those products that I showed off to you in the last episode of the Will Cain podcast. I put them on my Instagram, some of the Born Primitive stuff. I'm going to show you the Weatherman Underground umbrellas. I'm going to show you more stuff. I'm wearing a Born Primitive t-shirt right now. Freedom, paid in full. And I'm going to share with you all those history podcasts as I check a few of them out in an upcoming episode of the Will Cain podcast that you sent in to me. I appreciate your emails. I'll respond to them here on the Will Cain podcast very soon. I'll see you again on Friday. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.